Arc 6, Chapter 19. The sage's whereabouts at the unforeseen fight against heavy odds spread out were the winds of the aftermath of the battle at the 6th floor of the Pleiades watchtower. An enshrouding cloud of dust, the man and woman grappling with each other were covered in sweat and mud, and looking at those two with cold eyes from every other direction. Subaru, what's with that look in your eyes? You're saying that I've done something wrong. I've done nothing wrong, I've done nothing wrong. Julius, Subaru, don't try to fool us so much. Ram, there are some good sides to him is what Ram thought, but in the end, Barusu is Barusu. Those were the comments made by the newly arrived Julius and Ram in regards to Subaru, who had been grabbed by Shala. Regardless, Julius, we were fortunate to be able to reunite safe and sound. It's also good news that you woke up, but the situation is difficult to comprehend unless you explain it with words. Subaru, I would if it was something I could explain. Shit, let go. Shala, no pee. Seeing Shala clinging to Subaru's arms, Julius, whose hand was at the grip of his sword, shrugged his shoulders. He must have perceived that she didn't have any intentions of attacking them. Even Subaru understood that point, but it was true that he was having a hard time trying to get her away. Subaru, don't just watch, help me get her off. She has goddamn superhuman strength. Ram, your lips are curving into a smile, Pervusu. Subaru, they're not, don't team up with her, don't take it at face value. Emilia Tan, that hurts. I don't think it'll be too much of a help if you pull my hair. Emilia, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to help you at all. Subaru, you're apologizing for that. The stubborn Shala did not let go of Subaru's arm, and Emilia, with a somewhat blank expression, continued pulling Subaru's hair. Aside from that, Beatrice, who got trapped between the jostling Subaru and Shala, was turning her eyes in all directions, in a state of being crushed, saying, Kiyuu. Anastasia, what's this? Even after all that trouble, seems it's all been Changan into a pretty good mood. Meili, what's Oni-san doing just after waking you, P? I don't do well with noisiness, but I'm glad Oni-san woke up. Having slowly come down the stairs, Anastasia and Meili had also joined up with them. With this, all except Rem and Patrash, who were supposed to be undergoing their treatment, had gathered here. It was all well and good that they'd been able to reunite, but at this rate they wouldn't be able to calm down and have a proper conversation. Subaru, ANY, everyone, calm down. Let's talk. Overworking his throat after just waking up, Subaru managed to get everyone to follow his lead as he tried to take control of the situation. With that being said, within the group sitting in a circle, Shala kept latching onto Subaru's right arm, and on his left was Emilia, sitting Seiza-style at a distance enough to make him shiver. And Beatrice was settled on his lap. It would be an extremely extravagant battle formation in the eyes of an outsider. Ram, repulsive. Subaru, did you even see the disaster a minute ago? Does it look to you that I wanted this to happen to my right side? My bones hurt real bad. At this rate, my arm's gonna necrotize. Saying that to Ram, who'd spat those words out, Subaru looked at his constricted right arm. Being hugged by a half-naked girl would be a dreamlike experience for many. But in reality, rather than experiencing the softness of her skin, the flesh of his arm that had been squeezed and the pain of his joints that went to the limits had a scary effect on his bones and nerves. Frankly speaking, they could have been torn off. Subaru, well then, before my arm gets torn off from its roots, I would like to proceed with the conversation, but before that, first of all, everyone, thank goodness you're all right. Though it's scary that Patrash and Rem are unconfirmed. Beatrice, you're still being doubtful, I suppose. It's all right, in fact. Everyone is all right, I suppose. Julius, it is just as Beatrice-sama says, though your uneasiness and concern are justified. You can properly visit them afterwards. As you'd expect, this time we were all scared to death. Beatrice and Julius nodded at Subaru, who was delighted at their reunion. Julius, once again, put on a grim expression on his face, as if reflecting back upon the moment straight after they had been separated back at the sand sea. Julius, immediately after the space fissured, all of us, except for you, Anastasia-sama and Miss Ram, fell onto the other side into the flower garden of the witch beasts, you see. There, after many twists and turns, we arrived at the watchtower and were able to get shelter. Meili, Booty, Oni-san and the others weren't there. And since we knew they couldn't fight, we were worried. Julius traced Beatrice's earlier explanation, and Meili agreed as well, pouting. Their uneasiness was only a matter of course as well. When they had fallen into the underground area of the Sand Sea, Subaru and the rest had been outside and disappeared, which had made them worry, though that went for both sides. Meili. One-san really lost her composure. We had a tough time when she snapped a tea that sage-san, such that, when thinking back to it now, it sends shivers down my spine. Emilia. Hey, Meili, you don't have to say all that. At Meili's flirtatious glance unsuitable for her age, Emilia objected, her face going red. Her comments were no exaggeration. That could be easily understood by looking at Emilia, who was blushing all the way up to her ears. Though imprudent, he was genuinely happy to see her worry for him. Subaru. I see, so Emilia-tan was worried. It looks like Biko was worried to the point of crying her eyes out as well. I'm such a lucky guy. Emilia. Geez, Subaru, joking about again like that. Also, Beatrice wouldn't have cried her eyes out. Just around half of that. Yeah, that's right. Beatrice. If you want to look out for others, then do it properly till the very end, in fact, you natural airhead. Emilia. With the truth that she'd been driven to tears exposed, Beatrice pouted while Emilia remained clueless. Loosening his cheeks at that pleasant exchange, Subaru looked up at Julius. Subaru. If that's so, then you must have gotten pretty worried too, isn't it? It's unfortunate I couldn't see that expression of yours. Julius. Of course, I was greatly agitated, regardless of you, because of Anastasia Sama and Miss Ram. It was regretful to lose the two frail ladies somewhere beyond reach. Without showing you all my form of having a pale face and walking about in worry, currently I am only experiencing relief in my fragile spirit. Subaru. Why'd you make a conversation about you getting scared so graceful? Subaru twisted his lips at Julius, who was touching his bangs as if out of habit, with a bittersweet smile on his face. Without him putting up a strong front, and without even showing a weak side of his, it was an absolutely boring result. With that, Meili started laughing lightly at the exchange of the two. When they questioned her by merely gesturing through their eyes, she placed her braided hair against her mouth, and Meili. Oh, it's not ing. And she deceived them with a smile which seemingly held deep meaning. Subaru. Well, from this I get that everyone who got separated was worried for us. Nobody is missing in the end, so it's something which we can look back on and smile now. Ram, only Barusu can be so boldly shameless. Even now, Ram's petite figure and soft heart is about to break apart with uneasiness and fear just by thinking about it. Subaru. Is the Ni-sama who, among all the people I know, the one which seems to have the toughest heart, saying something? The truth is, amongst all of Subaru's acquaintances, Ram was the one who wielded the utmost mental strength. Her remarks seemed to be a silly joke, as if a matter of course, but he ended up intently looking at Ram's face, who was sitting right in front of him. White skin with light crimson eyes, and of course well-ordered facial features, along with refreshing beauty. Beautiful facial features like a suspicious berry found in the valley of sweetness and elegance. No matter how you look at her, she was the same Ram as always. Ram, put an end to that unpleasant gaze. Looking so intently, what do you want? Subaru. Well, I was just thinking that you're really Ram. Ram. This is totally hopeless now, isn't it? Subaru. Stop making judgments without any proper subjects. Not that, I mean. Subaru replied in a flummoxed manner back at Ram, who'd cut off and cast aside Subaru's words. The incident that had occurred just before he had lost his consciousness in the underground area came up in his mind. Ram had protected Subaru with her injured body by standing in front of the centaur. Her delicate figure seen from the back, which had been peppered with wounds, had faced that formidable enemy without any prospects of victory. Back then, he'd felt the terror of losing her, seeing her figure that showed no fear of being wounded. And now, both of them had made it back alive safely. He'd realized that fact by talking with the usually fearless her. Subaru. Sure enough, there's still this sense of distance between us. It did get strangely loathsome and worse, but when I think back on it, that too was. No, that still shouldn't be a good memory to reflect back on. Ram, I don't understand what you're trying to grumble out. Spit it all out, like a man. Subaru, I'm glad we're both safe, is what I mean. Plus, I'm also glad you protected and saved me at the end there. Ram, that was a waste of time. Subaru, how can you say that? Even though he'd honestly expressed his gratitude, it meant absolutely zilch to her. Following that, Emilia let out a stifled giggle seeing Subaru get miffed like that. Emilia, it's okay, Subaru. It's just because Ram's a little embarrassed. Subaru, Nisama's embarrassed. Wouldn't the heavens and earth switching places be more believable? Emilia, not really. Perhaps it's because you kept hugging Ram till she woke up, so she's like to be embarrassed. Even when separated, 'twas rough. Ram, Emilia-sama. Emilia had secretly whispered that into his ear, but Ram had reacted angrily to her words. She raised her eyes up unusually in anger as if she'd read Emilia's lips or something. Ram, I think it would be better that you didn't judge things using your own criteria, because I don't think I want to work for a dunderhead who doesn't understand people's feelings. Emilia, when you say dunderhead, you aren't referring to me, right? Ram, I'm not. Emilia-sama, you do properly think about people's feelings. If there's anyone who's got nothing to do with being a dunderhead, it would be you. It'd be so ridiculous of me to say otherwise. Emilia, I see. Wait up, let me think for a bit. Emilia began to brood in earnest thought at what Ram had said, whose words had been plastered with great sarcasm. Meanwhile, Ram glared at Subaru with a glint in her eye as sharp as a blade, and then stirred her lips into speech, saying, Forget this. Subaru reflexively nodded at her threatening attitude. When he'd woken up, he remembered that there'd been the traces of someone who'd been lying on the bed together with him. He'd thought for sure it had been Beatrice, but it seemed like according to what she'd said now, Subaru. Oh, I've forgotten it. I said I've forgotten it. Ram, good, you're not a dunderhead. Emilia-sama, let's leave it here. Emilia, has it come to Ram gradually becoming more outspoken about me? Emilia looked at her with reproach, but Ram turned her aside with a look of feigned ignorance. In any case, Subaru turned his eyes away from Ram, who seemed like she didn't want to touch on this subject anymore, and looked towards the last of his companions, at Anastasia. She sat beside Julius, fiddling with her pon-pons that adorned her hat as usual. But when she noticed Subaru's gaze, she gave him a graceful smile. Anastasia, so you're done talkin'. Natsuki-kun, I thought you'd forgotten about me. Subaru, I hope you can forgive me for my ego in prioritizing my own. I'm glad that you're safe too. Speaking of the last battle in the underground area, I haven't got a clue about what happened after. Anastasia, are you goin' to make me remember those scary thoughts where I too was thrown down into that pitch-black darkness? Natsuki-kun and Ramsan, and Patrash-chan were fightin' their damnedest, so the witch beast was ignorin' me. I wasn't of any use there, but I was goin' to be of use for the negotiations. Subaru, negotiations? Anastasia, with the sage-san who helped us, you know. Anastasia pointed at Shala, who was still nestling her face against Subaru's right arm. When he heard negotiations with this, Subaru frowned, but Anastasia gave him a wry smile. Anastasia, no, we're also quite confused. 'Cause she wouldn't answer anything till only a few minutes ago regardless of me pushin' and pullin' her, but with you Natsuki-kun, she's madly in love. Subaru, she wouldn't speak with you. This thing? Shala. It's not this thing, it's Shala. Master Subaru, shut up. Subaru responded dejectedly at Shala getting miffed and Anastasia shrugging her shoulders. Certainly, when he only looked at the situation, she had barely said a single word to Anastasia and the rest. However, she'd been nattering away at Subaru. So in reality, just about everything of this situation was unexpected. Subaru, when someone suddenly nestles over to you with 100 favorability, even if they happen to be a beautiful woman, this one's favorability is 0, so it isn't something worth me getting perplexed over. Shala, just now did you say that I'm a beautiful woman? Subaru, you sure have sharp ears when it suits you, hey? Once again, Subaru tried to push Shala's head off with his empty left hand. However, the more he struggled to do that, the more Shala's strength increased, eventually leading Subaru to give in. In the end, the out-of-breath Subaru shook his head, saying, It can't be helped with Shala still clinging to his right arm. Subaru. For now, let's put off all these trivial matters and talk about what should be talked about. I don't want us to keep going around and around in circles with a lack of explanation. I want you to tell us about various things. Shala. Sewer a thing. If it's something Master has to say, then let's hop to it. Julius. Indeed, your collaboration is a great help, so I wish to ask about this. You are the sage who retired to this Pleiades watchtower. Is my understanding correct? Shala, turning away SFX Subaru. Answer him. Didn't you just say you'd talk? Quite in contrast to her friendly smile, Shala turned her face away sharply from Julius' question. Straight after Subaru got pissed off at her poor attitude, Shala turned her pouting face towards him. Shala, Mimey, what happened, Master? Master, didn't you hammer it into me not to tell, speak, or say anything unnecessary to anyone no matter what they ask? I'm just loyally abiding by what you told me. I can't believe you're angry. I'm gonna file a case against you. Subaru, your master is absolutely awful. Shala, yeah, Master's such an awful person. I should demand an apology from him and for him to deeply reflect on himself. Subaru, so calling people master as you please is just. Emilia Tan, what's with those eyes? Emilia had narrowed her round eyes at Subaru and Shala's strange spiel. Subaru braced himself in case it was another inexplicable outburst, but Emilia continued by saying, Well, Emilia, it may not really be a big deal, but how can I explain it? Isn't the way you both talk quite similar? Subaru, does it look like I'm talking with such a chavish tone? Emilia, that's not what I mean. The expressions you both use is what I meant. You see, you always joke about even during serious conversations, right? That's the feeling I'm getting. Subaru, you think of me like that? Subaru was horrified by that completely unexpected evaluation of hers, but Emilia paid no heed to him. On the contrary, Julius, surely now that you mention it. Ram. Barusu's typical conversational ability. There's trouble lying in wait ahead then. Meili. But I really Lee-Ki Oni-Isan's way of talking. Anastasia. Though everyone's got some manner that sits heavy on your stomach, don't you think? Subaru's mouth gaped wide open as everyone appended their own evaluations on top of each other. However, a little girl had furiously lost her temper in Subaru's stead. And that girl had been Beatrice. Beatrice? Really, don't go saying just whatever you feel like, I suppose. Not only are all of you acting way too familiar with Subaru, you're also acting far too clingy ever since a while ago, in fact. How hard you think this is for Betty, despite taking Subaru's hand, I suppose. It's unfair, in fact. The topic had changed quite a bit midway, but Beatrice's had a gleeful disposition to her. However, Shala turned Beatrice's protests aside, with a look on her face that a beautiful girl shouldn't be making. Beatrice's already lacking amount of patience reached its limit when she saw Shala's complete lack of concern completely expressed on merely her face. However, before that, Subaru's karate chop hit Shala square on her forehead. Subaru, that's enough. Shala, ow, though it doesn't actually hurt, isn't that abuse? It is abuse. Master used violence against me. I'll be seeing you in court. Subaru, pipe down. You can speak with other people properly from now on, or this talk will go nowhere. Shala, would that be okay? Subaru, yes it would. Rather, I recommend it. It's about time for you to start speaking seriously. Shala's face turned to one of complete surprise towards the frowning Subaru's complaints. And then, little by little, her facial expression changed, first surprise, then comprehension, then assent, and finally deep gratitude. Then, she said, Shala, Yippee, yay, I got permission to talk. Now I don't have to play the act of the deeply mysterious femme fatale anymore. Hip, hooray. Subaru, now not even a fragment of it is left behind when it comes to that factor. Her face was lit up in a deep smile. If she had a tail, she'd probably be wagging it around in full swing. Though as a matter of fact, Shala's ponytail was swinging about in delight as she still held on tightly onto his arm, with her ponytail smacking against his forehead, his cheeks, and God knows what else repeatedly. Subaru, so it's okay to say that you're the sage from the rumors, right? The racket had died down for a bit, and finally, they'd truly reached the discourse that they should have undertaken before said racket. Shala, who'd let go of Subaru's right arm, was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the group, now sat in a circle surrounding her. Incidentally, his right arm had become numb and he couldn't raise it, nor would it move. Shala. Subaru, answer me. You're the sage, right? Shala. The answer to that question is difficult. Having been greeted with silence to his question, Subaru had once again repeated the same query. Following that, Shala replied vaguely, putting on a sour expression as if she'd ate a pickled plum. Subaru frowned on receiving that answer, revealing his bewilderment. However, it was Emilia who raised her hand up in place of him. She spoke out, prefacing her words with, "In which case, Emilia, setting aside whether you're the sage, the one they say guarded the sand dunes all this time inside of this tower would be you, right?" Shala. "Ah, that's me for sure. For 400 years, every single day forever and ever guarding the midst of this sand. And each barren day I've spent would be something that would make both the one reciting it and the one hearing it cry." Emilia. "Poor thing." Subaru. "Emilia-tan, don't get affected by it. And you as well, don't go exchanging unnecessary feelings." The empathetic Emilia's eyes teared over at Shala, who gave her response as she shook her fist. As he calmed Emilia down, Subaru, based off Shala's current answer, exchanged looks with Julius. Julius gave a nod at that exchange of looks and took charge of the conversation, speaking out "So, Julius, would I be right in recognizing you as having bore the burden of working as a sage for 400 years, as is typically well known?" Shala-sama. Shala, you're making me blush attaching stuff like sama. I'm not used to it, so you can address me without using any honorifics like normal. Using Shala-sama, dehe, Julius. Then I shall correct myself. Surely the one that is typically known as the sage is you. Shala. Shala. Wheel, I'm not so sure about that. Even if that's what's typically said, I don't ever leave the tower, so I don't know anything about rumors from the outside. It feels unexpectedly strange, doesn't it? Like I'm being called a sage. Shala's facial expression, which had been completely at ease, completely changed to one tinged in thoughtfulness, and the atmosphere did too. Julius also narrowed his eyes, facing the depth of her gaze, which seemed like it was searching for that. Her current remark wasn't the kind which you could ignore, even if you weren't Julius. Because what if Shala's words were the truth, Julius? If you aren't the sage, then it'd turn out that the legend of the sage, Shala, is a completely incorrect rumor. Or is it saying that there's a Shala who's considered to be a sage besides you? Shala, the sage, Shala from those rumors is someone I'm not aware of. Buat, as far as I know. There's no acquaintance of mine named Shala other than me. I was given this name from Master as well, so Master must have given it just to me. Buat. Shala's gaze had fleetingly turned towards Subaru, but Subaru hadn't ever named anyone Shala in the first place, nothing nor nobody. However, it was a fact that there was a certain ring to the name, Shala. Shala, too, was the name of a star. It was the star name that formed Scorpius, and its meaning was the stinger. Naturally, his thoughts extended to the true colors behind the white rays of light which had been fired from the watchtower. However, when it came to getting that information out her, he wouldn't mind postponing it until later. Right now, what had to take priority was a different issue. Shala. Since Master seems like he has no clue, Shala is just my Yi name, of course. Master gave that name just to me. There's no need for any other Shalas. Julius. I see, you seem to be really fond of that Master. Must have been a sinful guy, huh? Subaru, quit looking at me when saying that. Those are false accusations. Innocence presumed. Ram, guilty as proven. That's what I think. Subaru. Don't you take pride in being a lawful nation? Setting aside the interruption, he couldn't catch any glimpses of there being a lie in what Shala was saying. If that was the case, then was she different to the one from the legends? Suddenly, Anastasia started to rummage through her chest pocket without any consideration for the individuals conversing with each other. Then, lo and behold, she pulled some coins out from her purse for some reason or other. Subaru. Don't tell me. You're suddenly counting your money, Anastasia. Even though it's my hobby, and feelin' my change makes me work better when I'm deep in thought. That ain't my intention. Here you go. You'll get what I mean when you properly see the coins of the kingdom. Saying that, Anastasia tossed the coins on her palm over at the befuddled Subaru. He hurriedly caught them. What she'd thrown over to him were 4 coins: a copper coin, a silver coin, a gold coin, and a holy gold coin. There was probably no way that it could be something like a bribe for Shala, or an alternative of a tip. Making sure to check the coins as she had told him to, Subaru noticed the designs engraved into them. He hadn't really taken a good look at their money up until now, but Subaru. So it's common just about everywhere to engrave pictures and designs and stuff on money. How strange. Anastasia, I don't see what's strange about it. We've got to know from where the money comes from. Besides, it's 'cause money always comes with the history of its country. That's why stuff that's intrinsic to the country's history is engraved on it. Subaru. HMMMM. Subaru turned his attention to the engravings on the coins whilst he listened to Anastasia's explanation. And when he looked closely, I see, the coins each have different designs engraved on them. Emilia. The holy gold coins have the divine dragon, the gold coins have the first-generation sword saint, the silver coins have the sage, and the copper coins have Lugnika's royal castle on them. Didn't you know? Subaru. Emilia Tan is speaking like a super-learned character with what she's saying. Emilia, or more so, it's obvious stuff, I'd say. Were you so unaware when you were shopping that you never looked at the money properly? Subaru whistled innocently, covering his tracks, at Emilia's painful inquiry. And just after he checked them as he did that, the engravings on the money were exactly as she'd seemed to explain them. A dragon was engraved on the holy gold coin. A man with a sharp look was engraved on the gold coin. The royal castle was engraved on the copper coin. And finally, engraved on the silver coin was a Subaru. A young, handsome dude, I guess. They don't bear the slightest resemblance to Shala. Beatrice. But the guy on this drawing is what appears as Shala to the world, in fact. A handsome man with long hair and intrepid features was carved there on the coin. Naturally, even if you were to try and change the angle of it, it seemed unlikely that they'd be mistaken as a half-naked hottie of a woman. Shala herself was pestering him with a "Lemmy see," so he handed the coin over to her. When he did so, she gazed at the silver coin close up and said, Shala, "He, rather well made, huh? It looks exactly like Master." Subaru. Where are you seeing that? Ah, no, if the sage that's engraved there is your master, then what do you mean by me resembling the master inside your memories? Shala, geez, what are you talking about? My ye master is the only master. Subaru. So, let me restate myself once again. Where are you seeing that? He cleared his throat and shouted at the top of his lungs at Shala, who was comparing him with the design that was engraved on the silver coin. Even if they differed in hairdo, their expression, and in the first place even their race one, seemed to be different. The thing they matched in was their gender, it seemed. Were he to judge it only by the category of having a good-looking face, then Julius would be much closer than Subaru was to it. However, Shala looked at him with dissatisfaction, saying EA to Subaru's opinion. Shala, looks fairly accurate from what I can see. You have hair, 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a nose and mouth. Subaru, that sort of level. Aren't you complimenting it, like a preschooler's portrait? Emilia, I guess that I too still don't think that Subaru and this sage resemble each other. Though Shala had grown sulky, Subaru's verdict, and of course, Emilia's outed it. Their verdicts were reasonable. However, Shala still didn't look convinced. Shala, it's because I'm not very good at comparing people's faces. Men and women are just about different, but after that, isn't stuff roughly the same? After that, it'd come down to size, wouldn't it? Beatrice. She looked at Betty right now and came out with that, I suppose, this woman. Subaru. It's okay, since Biko being cute and small is unique. Putting that aside, you have such a sense of telling beauty, and yet you call me, out of all people, your master. You're mistaking me completely for someone else. Taking advantage of Shala's excuse, Subaru shook off some of the dishonor he'd accrued so far from the false accusations. It had been a ridiculous suggestion in the first place. Of course, he didn't even need to consider it. Subaru had nothing in common with Shala, and that was a relief. Or so he thought, but Shala shook her head at that and said, Shala, ah, me having found Master wasn't a question about appearance, so there's no issue with that. Subaru, not about appearance, you say, then how did you find out? By aura, Shala, your smell. Subaru, Shala. Well, no, I mean, I can't think of anyone except Master who'd let such a dark, pungent smell, to the point that my nose seems to scrunch up, hang off from them. Subaru, honestly, that's the first time I've had my feelings hurt like that. What am I that bad? When that keyword smell had come out, Subaru had readied himself up for just a moment. However, his readiness was shattered in one blow by Shala's choice of words straight after. Shala had a mystified look to her set towards Subaru, whose face had turned red at her unexpected evaluation. Shala, why did you get mad? Ah, is it because I said pungent? It's fine. Master's smell is really bad, but it's the type of smell I want to keep smelling and smelling. It's that of the unusual cooking variety, not the sort that makes you spew, so it's cool. Subaru. Girls don't say spew, and it's cool together. You didn't need to follow it up after that. Subaru covered his face with his palm, about to break down crying on the spot, feeling rather ashamed. Subaru. Erg! I thought I'd just about gotten used to people saying that, but being humiliated like this is far too much. What did I ever do to you? Emilia. It's okay, Subaru. I perfectly understand. So shall we bathe properly afterwards? Subaru, perfectly understand it my ass. The anguishedly dented Subaru had become useless. Beatrice let out a sigh as she looked at Emilia consoling him from the side. And then she grabbed a hold of Subaru's underarm and leaned her weight on his back. Beatrice, I understand the reason why you mistook Subaru as a complete stranger, I suppose. Shala, I haven't mistook him. You sure are impertinent for a lil ankle-biter, aren'tcha? Beatrice, sorry, but that lil ankle-biter is your precious master's partner, in fact. Oops, you mistook him for someone else, so he isn't actually your master or anything. Pardon me, in fact. Shala, Beatrice. Silently, sparks from their gazes flew up between Beatrice and Shala. The subject of their talk had ended up completely scattered all over the place. But even if they tried to get it back on track, the people they had who'd put the conversation back on course were too few. Given the situation, the face of common sense would get the short end of that stick. Ram. Beatrice Sama, let's leave the strife until after we're done. After our important discussion, you'll be free to decide who owns Barusu. Beatrice, Subaru isn't owned by anyone, I suppose. That is the point, in fact. Ram. Yeah. Ram let herself take in Beatrice's anger whilst her eyes filled with shock. And after she replied, Ram narrowed her eyes and called out to Shala, who was still looking at Beatrice with a thorny look in her eyes. Ram, in any case, if you could speak to us, then that would be a godsend. Up until now, you couldn't go along with having a serious conversation with us, but don't you think now would be okay to do so? Shala, I have Master's permission, so that would be okay. Saying that, though, even I'm not so nice as to answer absolutely everything. Or rather, I should say I don't know that much stuff. Ram, merely that answers makes it clear to me that you being called the sage is a mistake. Proudly puffing out her ample chest, Shala unabashedly declared her ignorance all the more. Ram puffed out her small chest as if she were rivaling Shala's. She snorted her nose, showing an air of superiority more than anyone else here. Ram, you're Shala, but not the sage. Then I wonder, do the Sword Saint and Divine Dragon ring a bell? Shala, Sword Saiyan and Divine Dragon. Ram, their names are Reed and Volcanica. Shala, Yuwa. Shala stuck her tongue out at Ram's question with a face that looked like she'd chewed something sour. It was easy enough to understand from her response that both of those names rang a bell. When Ram silently urged that knowledge out of her, Shala rocked her body from left to right, still sat cross-legged, and said, Shala, I know them. The stick swinger Reed and the cynic Volcanica are old friends of mine. I haven't at all seen them since we parted, but they must be doing great, right? Ram, one of them, Reed is dead a long time ago. Shala, seriously. He's dead even though he was a guy who was nigh unkillable. How did he die? Did he eat something strange? Ram, his lifespan. No one can go against the decree of the heavens above. Shala, his lifespan. Ah, I see, that's right. Reed was a human being, wasn't he? Having been told about the death of her acquaintance, Shala had cast her eyes down with a solemn attitude to her. She seemed somewhat sad, having dropped her shoulders, drooping down in dejection all over all the way to her ponytail. Regardless of what she'd been saying and her behavior up until now, Her figure mourning her friend's death was neutrally a sad thing. Whilst he finally regained his footing, Subaru too felt something panging inside his chest when he looked at Shala's face from the side. Shala, so Volcanica is doing well. Subaru, it's because they're a dragon. Shala, ah, a dragon, huh? Though it would have been better if Volcanica had died rather than read Subaru. Those words seem to be way too much, hey. Having shown only a mere touch of sadness, Shala quickly went back to herself. Her face had gone clear as she bitterly spoke about her other acquaintance. To that, Ram closed one of her eyes in thought and said, Ram, you remember Reed and Volcanica. In that case, you should know your master's name, right? Shala. Subaru and the others all held their breaths on hearing Ram's question. Only the questioned Shala's face remained blank, replying with an obviously. Ram's question was indeed quite effective at unraveling the mystery of the sage. The sage equals Shala's system had collapsed now, so if there was someone who had accomplished the deeds required to be called a sage, other than her, naturally, they would need to meet that individual. Shala mistook Subaru as that individual for some reason, but a name probably wasn't something which could be falsified. Subaru prayed that a miracle where a sage with the name Natsuki Subaru wouldn't come out of her here, and his prayer would be fulfilled. In a strange way which he couldn't possibly imagine. Shala, that's weird that Master's name is on your mind, considering he's right there, and though all of you are Master's companions, you don't know it. Ram, I'm sorry, but your master hit his head on the toilet bowl and forgot a bunch of stuff. Subaru, is there a meaning behind having restricted it to toilets? Shala, Master, you did it again. Subaru, again. With Shala looking at him sympathetically, Subaru tasted humiliation which he shouldn't have received. However, she hopped up as if she'd understood that reply and said, Shala, then you'll hear it from me. Master's name. That's right, even that name is that of the famed great erudite. Certainly being called something like a sage is only befitting of Master. Subaru, get to the point. Shala, you're so impatient, but that too is like Master. Shala gave off a gaudy gesture which contained irritation, but she stuck her tongue out with a pouty face at Subaru's demand. And then she placed her finger on her cheek and said with an awfully childish gesture, Shala, Flugel's Subaru. Huh, Shala, Master's name is Flugel. The great erudite too, Flugel, Shala's master. Shala's whole face lit up into a smile, and she delightfully puffed out her chest the moment she spoke those words. There was no shadow of a doubt that Shala was putting deep love, gratitude, and pure respect into that, and held reverence and affection towards Flugel. However, Subaru and the others' reactions varied in respect to that name. At any rate, he knew that name. Subaru. Isn't that the name of the person who planted the tree? Saying that, Subaru craned his neck at hearing the name of that historical figure whose fates had crossed only once before.